Hello, good evening, and welcome, and of course, Happy New Year to all the regular subscribers, new viewers, and anyone who just happens to have stumbled upon this video because they clicked a link somewhere out there on YouTube or on the internet. Nick Dutch here. There was a question that was asked me in the comment section of one of my videos, and I thought I would try and discuss it, or at least talk about it from my point of view today. Why do this today? Well, the question is about the book of Revelations and what I personally think Christianity would be like if the book of Revelations wasn't there. And of course, this video is being recorded on New Year's Eve at about nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. New Year is a time when people go slightly mad. They kind of lose their sense and lose their reason. People worry about the future more today than probably on any other day of the year. They enter into remorse about the past more on this day more than any other day of the year. And those who are of a paranoid, neurotic, schizophrenic bent are more likely to be concerned that the world is coming to an end on a day which was decided would be like the end of the old year and the beginning of the new year by people and not by the man upstairs, for some reason. But either way, that's the way that humans are. So the question I was asked is, what do I think Christianity would be like if the book of Revelations wasn't there? Quite difficult to say. My primary thought is, I don't think it would be all that different to the most part, the middle ground, even the middle ground and to the right. The right-wing political side of Christianity probably would not be all that different. The far-right aspects of Christian fundamentalism would be marginally different. But if you consider that there's so many things in the Bible that some kind of fanatical individual who is a little too well versed in their sales skills and presentation skills could use to whip a crowd up into a frenzy. It's all there. There's always something that you could use. The misrepresentations of the words of Jesus Christ, the adaptations of some of the text you find in some of the Gospels. There's plenty of a wriggle room for you to use the Bible in nearly any way that you see fit. I don't think that the problem is necessarily the Bible in its own right. I think it's the fact that people use religious ideas and religious texts in order to try and control people. So if there's someone who has, by their very nature, maybe a racist, a sexist, or a classist attitude, they can try and use the Bible to find a way of justifying it. If I just think about the hymns that we were taught in school, I think it was All Things Bright and Beautiful. There was a verse that has been changed in recent days, and that went on about the rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate. He gave them their great estate, or something along those lines, as if to say that you're poor because God wants you to be poor, and they are rich because God wants them to be rich. And that had to be adjusted, and that's only in recent days. That wasn't in the 1970s, that wasn't in the 1800s. That was just like a few years ago. I just wonder if people thought it would be okay to change the contents of the Bible, how many other phrases would be changed, how many other books and passages and parallels would be amended to try and give a more, I suppose, all-inclusive attitude, or a less socially conservative attitude, more pro-free thoughts and pro-people attitude. I mean, there would have to be an awful lot changed, because if someone's gonna write something down 2,000 years ago, they are going to be the products of their times, with the politics of their times, and unless the whole thing got changed, then you just bring in the politics of those times into this era, and that's something that I disagree with, although, most of my viewers will know, because I'm someone who is pro-religion, not anti-religion. I seriously think that the way that a lot of faiths go about things needs change. And it needs change because the world is much more heavily interconnected. We don't need the warring tribe attitude within our cultures as much. We've got enough of that between the political parties. We've got enough of that between the liberals, the conservatives, the Greens, and the let's all burn tons of oil because we're cool type people. Why do we need extreme religious politics thrown in there as well? I don't think we need that. But the Book of Revelations, does that really help or not? These days, in this era, because we've had the year 2000, the end time movement is probably getting more powerful. That much I would say. The end time movement is wrong, it's bad, it's undesirable, it's inappropriate. But it's there, it exists. And as it exists, that means it's just something else for more decent and liberty-minded people to find ways of attacking. So in some ways it's positive that it's there, because people can gather together to attack this common enemy, namely the end times movement. And there'll be, people who will try and explain this thing in terms of a more allegorical or a more mystical attitude. There will be people who will just outright attack in a very, very early deist, shall we say, way of doing things. I would say that the fear and paranoia of God, or the fear and terror that there is a God, will probably still be there, whether the Book of Revelations was there or not. That in its own right is obviously not a very good thing, and I think that can only help the political collective of a group, in that it makes evangelism much more possible and much easier to do, because you can convert people by fear. But once people have lost their fear, which is the one reason that the evangelists use to try and persuade people to follow this particular faith, then why would they continue following it? And that's why there are those who got into religion because of fear, and they then may start taking a more mystical attitude with the passage of time, hopefully. Either that, or they'll end up becoming atheists, which will then end up creating even more of a backlash against faith. So essentially, it's very badly planned out that evangelism is the way it is these days. It needs to stop. If you go onto cable TV or satellite TV, I'm sure there's lots of religious TV channels out there, and they're not looking at the subject of religion from a self-developmental or a contemplative direction. They're looking at it from a hard, aggressive, evangelical direction, and that in its own right is actually fucking them up very severely. Is the Book of Revelations itself the only thing, or the main thing, that can terrify people into becoming believers, or at least to become a member of that particular social group? I don't think so. I think there's many more terrifying or worrying things in the Bible, including just in the New Testament. We're not just talking about Old Testament wrath of God stuff. Just in the New Testament, if you know where to look, there's enough things that you could either look at and think, oh, that's a bit scary, or that's a bit inappropriate, or oh my word, if that's what God can do, I better do what God says, kind of stuff, which is there. So, in my opinion, the only thing the Book of Revelations does is, number one, make evangelism easier. but it does so in the wrong way. Number two, it's dangerous because of the end time cult stuff. Number three, and this is a positive, it's very entertaining. It's quite a fun read if you're interested in serious, like, opium trip type weird shit. It's amazing, and also for those who like symbolism and like looking at symbolism, it can be fascinating, because throughout the past couple of centuries, all the the Kabbalistic occultists have said, well, obviously the seven churches means this, it's to do with the seven planets and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So, is it necessarily a bad thing? No, I would say the end times movement and other movements which have come from it are socially negative, intellectually and creatively negative as well. And also the people who believe in that way, namely, God is objectively real, He will objectively throw me into a fiery pit, which does objectively exist, if I don't objectively change the label I give myself and start absorbing information from one particular source. Those are scary people, and those are people who aren't all that good for themselves or for society. But these people exist, and I don't think that changing a couple of books in the Bible will actually change them. And it is interesting that people who convert away from Christianity to, let's say, paganism, they do so taking with them the same kind of rubbish that they picked up from when they were, let's say, an end-time cultist, or within that particular charismatic evangelical set, and applying that to, let's say, their form of dogmatic Wicca, for instance. It appears it is a mindset that people get into, or a state of mind that people get into, that they find it very hard to get out of, because their idea or understanding in their own mind of a religion, or what it means to be religious, is to be subservient, or to believe literally, or to accept things literally, rather than to experience faith as being something which can be used to improve a person's character or personality, and to do so through a contemplative and more intellectual way, as well as through the more direct spiritual exercises which are designed to change the way the mind works, in terms of brainwave changes, bringing about contemplation, and absorbing ideas and getting into a better understanding of what's really happening in a person's life and what they're really about. I mean, the whole thing is it is a bit of a political clusterfuck. It really is. And that's obviously not very good. But it's once the political clusterfuck has been taken out of it that people will be able to think and start using religiosity well. Humans need religion anyway, full stop. Apart from, of course, those who choose to identify themselves with atheism, and instead of following Jesus Christ, they follow Pat Condell, or Thunderfoot, or Dawkins, or, whatever. Everyone follows someone, The atheists themselves have a God concept, but they call it a reason. They don't necessarily know how to reason, but they have this intangible, amorphous thing which they revere, and they don't fully understand it. They regard it as being important. There's books written about it, or books written by people who talk about it, actually, rather than teaching people how to reason. They talk about the concept of reason. And the atheists say they're not being religious. Think about it. It's something to do with the way that humans work. something to do with the way that we are. We choose labels, we accept labels, we measure everything by labels. We juxtapose positions against each other because it's easier than sitting back and thinking for oneself, coming to a conclusion, and then being humble enough to think maybe I could be wrong. And then doing further research to look into the thing which you could possibly be wrong about, and then to see how far you can go with your line of questioning about what your reasoning is. The problem's not with religion. The problem is with humanity and humanity's inability to be anything else apart from a political screwball, which, you know, is what we're about, and that's very sad, you know. The most highly evolved species on the face of the planet is a political screwball. That's us, you know. We've got things written into our DNA. And the things which are written into our DNA turn us as individuals into complete douchebags who end up coming out with the in-group, out-group mentality and not being able to see life objectively and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And it's... if it wasn't so tragic, it would be hilarious. It really would. So no, the book of Revelations isn't necessarily at fault. It's just another book. It's what people do with the ideas that's in it that matters. And what people have been doing with the ideas in Revelations has been, on one side of things, creating the end times cult, and on the other side of things, making some pretty cool sci-fi movies. So, you know, there's good and bad in both. So don't worry about it. I don't think the world's going to end anytime soon, not in my lifetime, probably not in your lifetime, probably not in your children's lifetime. As a species, we got challenges, we'll find a way. Seriously, we will find a way, slowly and surely, and making mistakes on the way, and trying to grow from the mistakes, and all the rest of that. Anyway, happy and chill New Year to everybody. Speak to you in a while.